I learned this years ago, getting in the pit is important with agents. And I think we all have to be a student of our profession. And I think the language of sales matters, and we gotta learn it, right? So I think getting agents in a room, if you're a brokerage team leader, we gotta be open to criticism. That's how you grow really, really fast. And the competence build up in that will build up confidence, which will enable them to use it in the real world. That's the fastest, easiest way for people to start using this. And if they don't do that, they probably won't use it in the field. That's just a fact. We've got to come in and build value and not be a commodity anymore. And we've got to become a category of one and say, here's exactly why I'm worth this. And you got to build it up. So the presentation is your presentation of value that's differentiating you from the rest of it.
You're listening to the number one real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, stories help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with Vikram Deol of the Real Estate Sales Academy. Vikram, we are both in hotels right now. For anyone listening back on iTunes and Spotify, we spent the last 6 weeks in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, and I'm ready. Punta Canada. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go back to Medellin. And, there, I was telling you the other.
I think this is the first time where you and I might have. We're in such close proximity where we didn't have like an outlet to go work. It was so hot to go to the balcony. We went to the pool. There was no Wi-Fi, and the coffee shops were not the greatest. And I was like, whew, I love me some Cody, but man, I need a break from. Sharon sent me something this morning. He's like, there should be a national holiday that's shut the F up for 24 hours where everybody, I was like, bro, I am used to like certain things. And I was like, I'm so excited to get back to Medellin and get back to our routine and chill out, hang out, have fun, and help people. What about you, man? What's good in the agency world right now?
Man, lots of things happening. Like we recently rolled out weekly client impact sessions for all of our agency clients, which like I was having a conversation with Sharon near the end of last year. And we were just chatting about like, how, a lot of agencies struggle because they don't have really a coaching component to what they're doing. And, that's what we're doing. We did 90 minutes yesterday, you and I, where we trained on, kind of how our beliefs map our thoughts map our actions, actions create momentum. And it's our momentum that we create for ourselves that create results. Then you went through with all of our clients and all your clients, kind of a conjoint training session that we're doing every Thursday. And there were I got a lot of messages on Instagram afterwards being like, that's exactly what I needed.
Oh, wow.
To start out the year. Yeah, I got like probably 3, 4, 5 messages on Instagram saying, thank you for sharing. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Because I think far too many agents, they want to do the thing. Like, we've chatted with hundreds of agents now, and I know that you have, and we have the opportunity to work with tons of great teams. A lot of agents, a lot of teams, they want to have an amazing year. They want to do amazing things. They want to help more people, but it's like the beliefs that they hold about prospecting, the beliefs that they hold about just life in general, or money, or habits, or family, are often things that are holding them back from getting them to where they want to go. And we tackled that as week 1. And it felt like, for me talking about beliefs and for you talking about like the things that they need to do on a daily basis, it's like I said on the call yesterday, and you'll remember this, that like, we could talk about prospecting. Hey, hell, you can listen to the last 200 episodes of agents telling you the things and the tactics and the tips. But if you don't fix the well, like the act of the things that you actually believe, you're just never going to sustain long-term success. Because, and I shared with everyone yesterday on the call, some limiting beliefs that I had early on in business and entrepreneurship, and how I reframe things, and that reframing really helped me, catapult to what we have today. But yeah, we're really excited. I think that's probably the thing I'm most excited about in the agency right now are the weekly client sessions, because, people are getting a ton of value through the call reviews that we're doing for them, and through the training that we're doing for them on, different frameworks that they can use to win in the market today. On top of that, everything we're doing with the podcast. How about you, man? Before we intro our guests, like what would you say is like one like aha moment that you had so far in 2024? Because I know that you walked into my hotel room a little bit earlier today, and you said to me like, "Hey, I just feel like I feel like everything I've been working towards over the last 6 months is coming to fruition." So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like, see, so here's the thing: is life isn't linear, right? There's jumping off points, and that jump off point. I remember one of my old mortgage buddies, Brady. Oh, what's his last name? I just forgot his last name, but he said to me, he said, "Vic, once it hits, it hits." He says it takes a while, because I remember I was in the business for a year, and everybody in my office, like I was with with a big name in the Pacific Northwest, and everybody there was talking about ninja and relationships. I'm like, I don't have any relationships. I just moved here. Like, you guys keep talking about referrals, and like, I'm like, I don't know anybody. I didn't go to UW. How did somebody like me start out? They're like, you just talk to your friends, and I'm like, I'm going through a freaking divorce right now. Like, what are you guys smoking on? And everybody was talking about relationships, right? And I said, I don't have any, and I don't know what to do. And when I started talking to my buddy Brady, I was like, when does this pop, bro? He's like, come into my office, let me show you something. And he started showing me, like he was a 7-figure producer in the mortgage industry. He started showing me a bunch of things. He's like, systems and processes. And then he pulled out his book from his coach. He's like, this is my training book for the last 5 years. And I was like, bro, why do you have a coach? And he's like, because they gave me this, they gave me that. I worked on this, I worked on that. And I said, oh my God. And I went out and I hired a coach that week, broke on a credit card. And the last year I've been putting together the Real Estate Sales Academy, like the Trust Rapport Influence Sales Method, the whole back-end portal, right? It's probably 26 hours of everything you need, from outbound calls to the listing, the $1 billion listing presentation, which Sharon gave us I say Sharon gave like everything, but somebody had to put the packaging on it, right? It was the frame, it was the engine, it was the suspension, it had the body, but it was missing like the interior. And I went through and dude, you know.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I one day on a train, I spent like 6 hours there, and then I heard his presentation and I heard his new stuff, and I went to his room for like 3 hours one night, stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning after the Rise conference, worked on it for like 7 hours. And then the whole month of December, just putting it all together. And there's over 100 hours into something that I've used in the past, but just upgraded to it. And we did, it's a 2-hour recording and 16 videos. And I remember telling my girlfriend on the beach, because I figured something out on how to get buyer agency for our clients by talking to them on Monday. And one of our clients was like, yo, bro, I use that. And the guy was like, where do I sign? I want you. He's like, and I was so sloppy. And he's like, I can't wait till you give us the framework like you have on the listing. But it wasn't the final chop of the block that made me confident. It was the fact that I've been head down, only focused on one thing, which was finishing the portal. Mm-hmm. That now 6 months later, I'm like, everybody who I talk to, it gives me goosebumps. Everybody I talk to, I can help. I don't care if you're doing 1 deal a month or 5. And it's the confidence of the process, because when you build your processes, you see your gaps. And when you see your gaps, you plug them. And when you plug those gaps, you're like, oh my God, I don't need to tell the consumer I have great service. I can show them the service we provided for the last 5 clients. And that does all the selling for me.
You mentioned processes, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to introduce our guest today, because the whole idea of this podcast, if this is your first time tuning in, we're well over 200 episodes into the podcast. We've interviewed some of the highest performing teams from across the country that are doing, billions of dollars worth of real estate sales. And, we have the opportunity to chat with somebody who is very systems and process oriented. Somebody who's had the opportunity to interview a coach, thousands of agents from across the country. We have Jim Remley out of Oregon here with us today. Jim, why don't you give us kind of the 60 seconds Cliff Notes version of how you got into the real estate business?
Love it. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Been in the business, I'll be really brief, 34 years. I got my license at 19. Yep. And got listed the top 1% of agents 2 years in, listed 150 properties in my second year in the business. Opened my first company at 23, grew that to 17 offices, became the largest office in Oregon at one point. Sold that in 06, right before the crash. Got really lucky. And
Lucky you.
yeah, it's a time to sell. And I went and worked with NAR. So I taught a lot of the designation programs. We're going to touch on buyer representation today. I taught the ABR class for 10 years. And then I went back and I got recruited to come down and help another company grow in Southern Oregon. So we grew that from 38 agents to over 250 agents, from $100 million of production to $1.4 billion in production, doing 3,000 transactions a year. And I sold that. And now I am a brokerage coach. And so I coach brokerages across the country as my specialization.
Bro,
60 seconds.
We need to bring you into Real. You want to start, Cody? This is our first. It's so I'm rusty. Like Cody and I have done a couple of privates where it's just him and I over the last month, but we haven't interviewed anybody in like a month. I'm like, man, it's like riding a bike. It's a little wobbly at first.
Let's start with right now in the industry that we're walking into in 2024. There's a lot of hopium that's happening in the real estate market today. And when I say hopium, there's a lot, like we talked about systems and processes and things that agents need to do. I want to start there. And I want to start with, like, what do you think that in 2024, are there different things that agents need to be considering in a 2024 environment? When it comes to, like, obviously there's a lot of changes that are happening with buyer representation. And a lot of people in the past didn't necessarily know how to explain what they did to the buyer. Like, what are some things that you're thinking about and you're teaching right now that might have not been applicable in a 2021 or 2022 environment that are now applicable today?
Well, because of the lawsuits that have happened, and there's, every single day there's a new lawsuit being filed around buyer representation because, it's a money grab for attorneys, frankly. And so they're seeing blood in the water. They saw the win, NAR, losing $5 billion. Some people think it couldn't bankrupt NAR, frankly, and it might. So we'll see. But setting that aside, a lot of the people that I talk to when I'm flying around the country and teaching, they'll say, well, it hasn't impacted my market. I'm not going to worry about it. That is a dead wrong approach to what's happening with buyer representation, because this will impact your market. And here's why. Even if there's no lawsuit in your local area yet, there will be soon. There will be. So here's what's happening. When you go out on a listing appointment, inevitably in the next month or two, when you're going on your listing appointment, some seller's going to say to you, I just read the Wall Street Journal. I just watched ABC News. I just watched 60 Minutes. And I understand I don't have to pay a buyer's agent rep anymore. I can just pay for my own services and the buyer's got to pay for their own services. Is that true? And the answer to that is, it is true. But how strong are you as a listing agent to, talk to the seller about, well, that is true, but there is some advantages to paying the buyer representation fee, and you walk them through that conversation, which we can do today too here. But let's assume that you're a super strong agent and you can nail that conversation because you've been well trained. It's not about you. It's about the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of desperate, weak agents that are hanging on by a thread that will take a listing at any cost. And so what happens tomorrow morning is you go out to show buyers houses and you pull up 10 listings in MLS. And suddenly, a month from now, 2 months from now, 2 or 3 of them are a zero BAC. And that's going to start happening, and it's happening across the country. So now I've got to get myself tuned up on buyer representation. I've got to have a presentation, and I got to know my buyer representation agreement cold. So that's kind of the starting point probably for today's conversation.
Well, I want to throw a stat out there that we've been throwing out recently, coming out of our call center and our inside sales agent team. We've done now well over 190 call reviews, and we're an ISA company. We did 190 call reviews, and we were reviewing calls before, but we've recently really started to track what our agents are saying. 190 call reviews, 8% of agents are actively asking buyers or sellers for an appointment. Now, that's super low, and it was a lot lower than I thought it was going to be. And these are people that are receiving live transfers.
It's higher than I thought it would be. I'm still waiting till you get to that 1,000 number. I'm like, I want to see the 1,000 number. And now these people are being trained by us, but I want to see at 1,000, like what that number is, because
people that are actively getting transfers sent over to them, like that means that the vast majority, it means the vast majority of the industry doesn't even know how to ask for an appointment. How do we train them effectively on how to ask how to actually explain buyer representation. Like what do you think in a 2024 environment when these lawsuits are going to happen? Number one, do you think that we're going to see do you think we're going to see a mass exodus of agents, or what do you anticipate to happen?
I do see a mass exodus of agents that can't adapt. A lot of old time agents won't be able to adapt to this because they've been so used to running the business the way they've been. But here's kind of a way to look at it kind of holistically across the country. 17 states right now already require that buyers sign buyer representation agreements. So it's like, not half, but a good size of the country is already in this kind of position of when I work with a buyer, they have to sign a buyer representation agreement. Now what you're going to start to see in a lot of states is a push for that. Washington State, as of January, my neighbor, they're requiring now buyer representation agreements to be signed when you work with a buyer. Oregon will go to it next. We're on track to start looking at that as well. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to learn how to explain these things. And here's the biggest thing is the biggest fear point with buyer representation agreements is how do I convince somebody to write me a check for $20,000, for $10,000, which is my buyer representation fee. And that's the fear point. So, and the agents are not confident in it, but the reason why they're not confident is because they lack competence. And competence comes from training and skill building, what you guys are doing all the time with your groups and your people. And you got to train them how to do a buyer presentation, just like we got trained early on in our career to do a seller presentation. That's where we build
Jim, yeah. Most agents don't do a seller consultation. Right, I don't say that to be condescending, but most agents, what they do is they go in, they show some pictures, they put a package together. They say, look at me, I've sold 1 billion homes. My company's this, my company's that, this. It's all about me. Yeah. They show some pictures. They say, we put it on the MLS, right? We put it on 700 other websites. We do professional photos. And then they're like, do you want to work with us? And that's the worst thing, because they do a 30-minute tour of the home. And then after the tour, the seller says, okay, what do you think it's worth? And they're now trying to talk about strategy, right? Most agents were trained with things that were 30 years old. And the number that, when Cody and I were talking about this a few weeks ago on the beach, and I was like, 8% is pretty high, bro. I was like, that's because you work with teams. That's because they're training. That's because they're paying a lot of money for your services. They've paid a lot of money for leads. So they have somebody yelling at them, hey, ask for the appointment. They have your script. They have my script. We train them on that now. The average agent doesn't have any of that. They're sitting at home, and the average agent isn't able to ask anything. And so when you talking about how does somebody ask for a $10,000 check, and their sales pitch before was, well, the seller pays me, so you should use me. Well, that was always wrong. The seller never paid you. The listing agent agreed to share some of their compensation with you. And it's always been like that. But now you have to try to show value. And the agents have no idea as a buyer's agent what they actually do, because they've never written out a process, and the process gives them confidence. So because they don't have one, it's going to be mayhem for them.
Yeah, if you go on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, and you start looking at the comments around all these conversations, almost all the comments are very negative about agents. They'll say, why would I pay somebody $20,000 to open a door or to show me a house? Their perception of our value proposition is super low, like car salesmen. So You're exactly right. We've got to come in and build value and not be a commodity anymore. And we've got to become a category of one and say, here's exactly why I'm worth this. And you got to build it up. So the presentation is your presentation of value that's differentiating you from the rest of the people.
So from a marketing perspective, I understand how to to write an offer that gets people to, touch us on pain points. But how do we, what are some things that agents can do in order to drive the value? Because I'm an outsider, so Vic has sold real estate. I haven't, but I understand the real estate agent very, very well. We've been working very closely with them over the last, 2-3 years, but I've never actually sold real estate. I've never gone through the transaction. I understand the transaction process, and I, through talking with Shrawn and talking through Vikram, but talk to me, use me to talk to me to explain the value of using a buyer, a buyer agent. I understand seller concessions. I understand the art of negotiation, but like, why should I use a buyer agent?
So this is exactly what we have to address, right? So first of all, I have to have my presentation. So if I was working with you, Cody, and we came into contact with each other somehow, some way, was referred to you, open house, call, whatever. At some point, I'm going to say, hey, Cody, do you mind if I just take a couple minutes and kind of show you how I work? Or, hey, Cody, do you mind if I just kind of walk you through the process of buying a home in today's market? That'd be cool. You're going to say yes, because I'm going to make it a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation. Let me 30 minutes because I'm going to put people to sleep in today's world. But now I need to have like the 10 things I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover the top 4 things that buyers want from an agent, according to NAR's study of 100,000 buyers last year. Top 4 things. Number 1, help them find the right home. 2nd, help with price negotiations. 3rd, help with term negotiations. 4th, is helping with the paperwork. That's all seems so basic, but you'd be surprised at how many agents don't cover that in a typical conversation. But
98%.
Yeah, 8%. So the first thing I'm going to say, so Cody, obviously the first thing I do when I'm working with the buyer is we identify what you're looking for. And we got to put that in the MLS, and of course it's going to spit out the results. And then every day you're going to get an update on what's happening. But that's what every agent can do for you, right? You can even do that yourself with Realtor.com and Zillow. Here's so we had to cover that ground right out of the gate. We want to take up the easy thing and say, yeah, we know that part's easy. That's like nothing. Now I'm going to say, but what I really specialize in is helping my buyers not just look at what's in MLS, but look at properties haven't hit MLS yet. Those unlisted properties that are not quite there, the ones that are maybe coming soon. So I leave no stone unturned. So this is the magic right here. I leave no stone unturned. I can kind of spell that out for you. I'm going to look at for sale by owners. I'm going to look at expired listings. If you have a neighborhood you want to go into, I'll canvas the neighborhood for you. I'm going to network with other agents in the community and ask about the listings they have coming to market that haven't quite hit the market yet. Literally, we're going to canvas the whole market. You're going to know every single listing, listed and not, that's going to be hitting the market. Because what I find is the best properties that are super low inventory market don't hit the MLS. They're sold before they get there. Now, I'm assuming, Cody, you'd be interested in unlisted properties, right? Yeah. So that's one thing I specialize in. Let me just give you a quick story, guys, as a side note to all this whole conversation. I've been looking to do a 1031 last year. So I was out looking for properties across the country, and I happened to be speaking in South Carolina. I was doing a seminar out there. And so I messaged a few agents out there, and I didn't get an immediate response, but I landed in somebody's like farming database, right? And about 3 months ago, I get an email from my kid named Paul, and he says, hey, Jim, you contacted me a while back about finding a 1031 property. If you're still interested, I have a bunch of unlisted properties coming to market soon. If you'd like to work with me on these and be first to know, let me know. And I said, and then he had a Calendly link, which is brilliant. Click his Calendly link, landed on his calendar for a 15-minute call. I had the call with him. Great kid. He said, Jim, it sounds like, it was a good working relationship. I'll send you a couple of things you just need to sign to work with me. Is that cool? I said, yeah. So he sends me an email. Here's what the email is. It's the agency agreement for South Carolina. And then right behind it, what is it? Buyer representation agreement. And what does it say? It says on here, all the unlisted properties, unrepresented properties is going to bring to me. What's it going to charge me? 3%. How long is the agreement? 365 days, full year. Now, what did I do as a buyer? I signed it. I want to know about every unrepresented property out there in the market. Yes, I think that's like an easy layup way to get these buyer representation agreements signed, is talking about those unrepresented, properties that are out there. That's what every buyer wants to have. So that's like a first step into the conversation.
Here's what we're doing. It's one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that people don't know what the contract looks like, because when the first time I filled out a contract for $1 million property up in Issaquah for my buddy, who's a referral to me, I was shaking. I was shaking. I was sweating. I was making mistakes. And I'd only been through a purchase and sale agreement maybe a handful of times. I didn't know what was in it. If I didn't know what was in it and I'd been through these classes, I'd been through the MLS, I'd been through the brokerage crap. If I didn't know what was in it, and I tend to see myself as a higher level person that studies these things, if I didn't know what was in it and I'd written offers, I had sold my own properties, we had bought properties, flipped properties. If I didn't know what was in it, person on the other end didn't know what was in it. So I was like, okay, this is a huge problem. So we started to, in the buyer consultation, we've always done buyer consultations. I sold Cutco knives to make $1,000. If I'm selling houses to make 15 to 60, 80, 100,000, and I don't have an hour of my life to go meet with somebody, like, shame on me.
Right.
So we've been doing buyer consultations since 2012, 13. And what we do is we have a package. We call it the top secret package. And inside of the top secret package, after we go through the whole presentation, we talk about the things that we do, blah, 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 right? Talk about the unrepresented, the FSBOs, the canvassing, circle dialing, right? We show them all the things. I say, can I real quick just bring an offer to life with you? Because like, whether you use me or you do this on your own, this is what you're going to have to do. This is the form you're going to need to know how to fill out. And I give them that option. Like, you don't have to use me and you can do it on your own. So they're like, oh yeah, sure. Maybe we will do it on our own. And I go through the purchase and sale agreement line by line. And our agreement, right, Jim and Cody, you haven't seen it, but in the Pacific Northwest, it shows agency before it shows addendums. So I say, okay, in the agency part, actually, you know what? Before we talk about this, like, let's talk about like the addendums, the things that we do to protect you. Would that be okay with you, Jim?
Sure.
They'd be like, yeah, of course. Like, how do I stay protected? Right? Who doesn't want protection? Now we go through and I just start. And the other thing is you guys, Jim, when you're talking to a buyer, what do you say? Like when they say, I like the house and they're like, it's offer time. What do you say like inside of the house to them?
If they say, I like the house, I'd say, well, if you like the house, let's go back to the office and make sure nobody else buys it before you do.
Okay. Okay. You got a good line, but most people say, let's go back to the office and write up an offer.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say, let's go back to the office and type up an offer.
Right.
So why would we show them something online when psychologically our brain already is writing an offer? Pull out the agreement, get out a pen, give them the pens. And when you fill out the offer, you literally fill it out. And the reason you give them a pen is because they're going to sign the offer with you. They're visualizing the process with you. When we get to the addendums, right? Show flow demo, as Sharon always says, show flow demo. Like I actually just created a YouTube video on my YouTube video, YouTube channel. If you guys want to go watch a 20-minute video on how we actually do this, and we go through and we talk about the addendums. Okay, so this is a financing, this is an inspection, this is a this, this is a that, this is a lead, this is a this is a utilities, right? And everything you have a proof piece. Let me just show you how we protected our client, Cody, who just bought a house last month, right? He wasn't able to X, Y, and Z, boom. Oh, well, our other client, Jim, he needed this and this and this, and you, boom, here's the proof piece, here's the proof piece, here's the proof piece. Oh, here's how we helped with the inspection. Right? It's a 52-page long inspection. Bring an inspection report, smack it on the table, show them what happens, freak them out because as Sharon says, they live in a black box and they don't know. So when you start to pull all this stuff out and you start to show them, oh, there was rot in this house, there's termites in that house, this one had a roofing issue, this one had mold in it, this one had this. They're like, whoa, oh, here's how we saved them with the financing on this one. And you start to put proof on top of proof on top of proof. Now they're like, holy crap, like this person actually knows what they're talking about. We thought, and you got them when they say, well, we thought all you did was open the door.
Right.
So I want to shift gears here a little bit because I think that that's a great explanation, Jim and Vic, on like explaining the value of buyer representation. My big question becomes this: in a 2020 environment, how do we get agents to take action? How are you getting agents to take action to actually learn the process of explaining buyer representation? Like, what does that look like for you from the agents that you're coaching, the agents that you're working with, or just like agents in general? Like, like how do we raise the overall collective awareness that this is super important?
Well, I call it, and I learned this years ago, getting in the pit is important with agents. And Vikram, you had such a great thing there. I just wrote it down because I think we all have to be a student of our profession. And that line that you said, which is, can I bring the offer to life for you? That's a $1 million question.
Jim, I'll charge you a small royalty.
Okay, thank you. That's a really good one. But I think the language of sales matters, and we got to learn it, right? So I think getting agents in a room, if you're a brokerage, or you're a team leader, and making them sit down and making them present to you as if you're the buyer. And we do it in a round robin. Somebody sits at the front of the table, do your buyer presentation. These two are going to be the husband and wife. And then we rotate. And then we have open critique, and we take down our guard and we say, critique me. And we got to be open to criticism. That's how you grow really, really fast. And the competence build up in that will build up confidence, which will enable them to use it in the real world. That's the fastest, easiest way for people to start using this. And if they don't do that, they probably won't use it in the field. That's just a fact. And I want to give you one more tip on that presentation. So we scratch the surface when we talk about finding unlisted properties, but let me give you one more layer down on that, because agents listening to this really need to hear this, because still buyers perceive that's the easiest part, finding the house. So now I'm going to say, guys, once we find the house, and I say this out loud, that's the easiest part of this process. Yeah. My work really starts when you find the house. And let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to do deep research on any house that you select. So here's what that includes. I'm going to pull all the permits that have ever been done on this house to make sure they got final. I'm going to look at the plat map. I'm going to look at the aerial map. I'm going to look at the assessment, make sure they've been paying their taxes. I'm going to tell you what the seller paid for the house when they bought it, if they've refinanced it, what their refinance was. You're going to know more about this house by the time I'm done than the seller knows about their own house. That's my goal. And I could go on and go deeper and deeper, but I want them to begin to think, there is no other agent in the world that will do this. I have to work with Jim because he's going to go so deep into this that I can't not work. And then I like what Vikram was bringing up about showing them and referencing other transactions you've helped people with. And that's where you can get into this negotiation, because 2 of the 4 reasons why people are going to hire you is your negotiation skills. And if you can highlight that, that's going to be huge too. I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Like you have to sit down, right? In 2024, you should have been doing this in 2023. You should have been doing it in 2020, right? You should be a professional. Like you make the opportunity to make so much money and you don't want to become an expert in your field is insane to me. Like you don't want to use a script because you sound scripted. Well, you should hear how you sound unscripted, because Cody and I hear those calls. Jim hears those calls, right? And the reason why you don't want to use a script is because you don't practice, because you're embarrassed that you sound stupid when you're brand new, because we all sounded horrible when we started to use, like Cody and I start a script together. I'm like, oh my God, did I say that? He's like, yeah, bro, you said that. I'm like, why did I write this down? He's like, I don't know. You're just writing. And then you say it out loud. You're like, oh, that was bad. Right? If you don't utilize a process, if you don't write down what you do, you're already irrelevant. And unfortunately, like I was talking to an agent yesterday. I said, how do you stand out? And she's in Niagara. I said, how do you stand out as a buyer agent? She says, oh, well, I just tell them like I'm a local agent. I'm not from Toronto. I said, aren't there other agents that are local? She says, yeah, but I give them the best service. I said, how do you give them the best service? She said, well, I'm always there for them. I said, you're always there for them? What about when your kid's sick with COVID? Well, then I have somebody to help. I said, who's that help? She's like, well, I'll find them then. I was like, do you see how your process is so broken? Which is why you, in 2021, you did X 23 deals, and then you did 22, you did 12, and this year you're at 7 or whatever the numbers are. Like, do you see why? It's because everybody did well in 2021, and you're personable, you're nice, you're smart, you're knowledgeable, you know the market. You're not unintelligent, but you don't have a process to help people. You're just out there hustling, and hustle gets you what hustle gets you. But when the markets go hard, like they are right now, and the buyer agency is going to get competitive, because I know there's teams out there right now, right, Jim? You trade them. There are teams out there that have been pounding the pavement, waiting for this day to come, because they're like, all you agents that have been sucking up our deals are finally, they are praying for their state to take this on, because they know that when they do an open house and they have the conversations and you're unprocessed, unscripted, and they are going to wipe the floor with you. And you don't have to listen to this. You don't have to listen to Jim. You don't have to follow Jim. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Cody. You don't have to do any of it. The reality is, if you don't, in 2025, you might not be in this industry, and you're going to be working a 9 to 5, following somebody else's processes, hating your life again. So you can either follow your own and make them, or you can follow somebody else's, but you're not going to be able to do both anymore in this market. All that low-hanging fruit, which was, oh, the seller pays for us, you should use us, those conversations are gone, like long gone.
I love it. High tide floats all boats. That's the 2019, 2020, 2021 market. And when that tide runs away from you, all those boats sink to the sink, and there's nothing to float on, right? That's the market that we're in. Yeah. One thing I want to share too, which I think is important, is that we did a study internally with our team, and we found that 72% of buyers are actually sellers in disguise. So the way you present yourself to buyers, right, and the way you come across with a professional process like Vikram's talking and Cody's talking is going to be really kind of an eye opener for these potential sellers. Remember, they're sellers in disguise. They're coming to you as a buyer, but really they have a house to sell. And if you have a professional process as a buyer, they're going to say, oh, maybe I want to use him or as a seller, as a listing agent. And when you have no process and you're totally winging it and you come across as just one of a million different agents they could turn to, there's no reason for them to talk to you as an agent. Now,
where was this? So just so that people understand the study, because I think this is super important, because so many agents say, oh, I want sellers, I want seller leads. It's like, for us, we're like, this is your database. These we don't generate the lead. Like the lead's already generated. Like they're a homeowner, but I want somebody who wants to sell. Like, how do you guys, number one, can you go through, Jim, really quickly with that study? You said 72% of buyers are actually sellers in disguise. Where did that stat come from? And number two, how can agents have better conversations with the buyers that could potentially be homeowners?
So we're a regional franchise, 110 offices, and this is a study that we did with our companies, right? And so what happens is when we're interviewing people and we start to ask a question, they come to an open house, they call us as a buyer, and we ask good questions. Hey, do you have a home? Do you need to sell first before you make your purchase? This is where this gets revealed, right? But you got to have a good question on the other side of it. You can't just, and there's so many agents, I'd love to have you study this, Cody, too, with your team, is how many times are they asking, do you actually have a house you need to sell? And the easiest way to ask that question is to say, hey, can I ask you what your housing situation is now? That's $1 million question, by the way. What's your housing situation now? And then they're going to say, oh, I own a house or I rent a house. And now it's revealed. I know. So that's where we got those numbers. And the reason why we wanted to get to it is because we wanted to tell our agents, listen, if you want more sellers, start with more buyers. Buyers are the easiest way to find sellers. And if you're doing a great job of attracting buyers, by nature, you're going to have a lot more sellers. So that's like a secret sauce that nobody wants to think about. They're all doing all these things to go after directly sellers, but buyers are kind of the back door into it. The other thing I just want to touch on really quickly, we did this study in terms of success with closing appointments, right? And so we did the study and we found that when we were competing with another office, a local office in our market, another regional franchise, with sellers and with buyers, and we were up interviewing against them, we had about a 50-50 shot of getting the business. Basically, it boiled down to personality. Who did the client like better? But when we added one secret piece of ingredient here, we got our close rate to 84%. And the 84% difference is sending out a pre-meeting booklet success portfolio of some kind. With sellers, right, we've heard of pre-listing kits, but we took it in a different direction and we went towards a success portfolio. And this is a great time of the year to do one, by the way. Success portfolio is a booklet that you put together of all of your transactions for the previous 12 months. And if you don't have a lot, go back 24 months, make it a visual, beautiful presentation. It could be with buyers and sellers, have the testimonials, have pictures of what you've done to help them, talk about your stats within that transaction. We help them get $10,000 off or negotiate $10,000 in closing costs or whatever, help sellers sell for more money, whatever your story is. But by setting that out and they get it before they talk to anyone else or at the same time they're talking to anyone else, 84% close rate. So I wanted to share that with you too.
So good.
Jim, I wish we could jam for another hour.
Yeah, that was fun.
Have you back on in the future.
Sure. Love it.
If somebody were to want to reach out to you, maybe they want to learn a little bit more about what you're up to. Maybe they have a brokerage and they want some coaching. Where's the best place that we can send them?
So my coaching website is realestatecoach.com. And if they hop over there, they're going to see we got a webinar for free right now running. It's a Rockstar Recruiting, 2 hours of just all kinds of strategy techniques for recruiting agents in your market. We focus on recruiting experienced agents. Not that we won't take a new agent, but we've got to go where the real bread and butter is for real estate teams and brokerages is recruiting experienced agents. So that's available. And they can also find me on all the socials at eRealestateCoach as well.
Jim, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for both you and Vic for really diving into the buyer representation agreement. Like this is a ton of value. If you're listening back on iTunes or Spotify, replay this thing, take some notes of how you can actually get buyer representation agreement signed, because so many agents that I've spoken with over the last couple of years have so much resistance towards getting buyer representation agreements signed because they don't have a say and they struggle asking for a meeting. So this is a great opportunity. If you listen back on iTunes or Spotify, rewind this thing, take some notes, do yourself a favor. And if you're on iTunes, Spotify, you got a value today, I ask that you leave a review. Really does help us reach more agents, really on a mission to help more agents get the right information, because we know when they have the right information, they make good decisions. So thanks for tuning into another episode of the Our Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.